You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain if they get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality. Whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms, or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast. Thanks for choosing the Boundless Authenticity podcast. Today, I'm joined by a return guest, Laura Van Tyne. If you haven't heard our first podcast from a while back called The Karmic Path, then you need to go check that out afterwards. Laura is a remote viewer, author, and speaker. Laura Van Tyne holds a BS in education, a BA in Spanish, and a master's degree in second language acquisition, with much of her life spent as a middle school teacher. 20 years ago, the paranormal realm broke through her home and she stopped teaching to determine how to keep her family safe. Today, she helps others with similar problems when faced with the unseen world. Laura focuses on soul health and how we can create a healthy soul. Today's topic is the unseen energetic world. In this episode, Laura and I discuss various topics including different forms of spiritual warfare, how to recognize the signs that you are in a spiritual war, and I ask Laura the question, are ETs demons? I'm just pausing for a second. I think this software or platform, whatever you want to call it, it's got a little bit of a lag.
It's got a little bit of a lag.
So tell us, tell everybody. That's fine. You can say what you were saying.
All right. Very good. All right. So, gosh, I don't know where to start. Basically, everything is energy. And when we can understand how energy works, we can learn how to, and the word I'm going to use is not quite accurate, but it is. We can learn how to manipulate that energy to soften the energy to help smooth out our lives. And there's a whole host of things in this unseen energetic world. And I go back to the concept of the microscope. And years ago, we didn't know viruses and bacteria existed. And those viruses and bacteria were unseen energies to the naked eye, right? With the advent of the microscope, we can now see the viruses and bacteria. We know they're real. We know that we now need to wash our hands, keep our water clean so we can stay healthy. And it's that same type of element. And as our technologies are advancing, we're able to see more and more of this unseen energetic realms through the basically phone cameras and all sorts of technologies. And the big question is how does that affect us?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. Just last night, I was looking at the screen, watching a replay of everything that had happened throughout the day on my security camera outside it. And there were these, I can only call them entities that were moving up and down the yard, because it wasn't people, it wasn't animals. It was about the size of a human being would be, an average size person, but it was like a blob. It was translucent, almost like plasma type, but it was just moving around like it owned the place. I was like, well, while you're out there, grab a broom and sweep, why don't you?
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I got my start a long time ago. As you mentioned, I used to be a public school teacher. And at some point, literally, the paranormal hells just sort of broke through into our house. And I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And this is almost 20 years ago, where we didn't talk about these things. We had to keep them private. The internet wasn't what it is today. And so with the advent of the internet growing and people starting to awaken, et cetera, these concepts are much more amenable to discussion. They're much more amenable to understanding that we are multidimensional beings. We're not just in these physical bodies, but we live and exist forever. And so as we utilize these bodies, what we're really doing is that our soul energy, what is quintessentially us, my soul, your soul, everybody's soul, is unique, and we're all related at the same time. So when my soul entered this physical body, this is where I have the human experiences, the mortal experiences that my soul is looking for to basically evolve, ideally, and ascend. And so as we're doing that, we are living in these mortal bodies, there's this unseen energetic world that really impacts us. And what do we do about it? I mean, we go back to that concept of, you go into maybe a business meeting and your boss is upset or something, or maybe it's a family reunion and that there's, warring factions within the family, and you walk into that room and it's like, gosh, that tension is so thick you can cut it with a knife. What is that? That is heavy energy. That energy permeates us and it can bring us down, but we can have the tools to mitigate that heavy energy to when we go into that room, that toxic room where there's going to be volatility or I want to say civil discourse, but civil discourse seems to be almost non-existent nowadays, right? And there's some things and strategies that we can do, because what it does is it keeps our soul healthy. At the bottom line, the end of the day, we have to keep our soul healthy. We have to heal our souls. When we leave these physical bodies, the energy that animates our soul has to go somewhere. So the healthier we can have our soul, the healthier we can maintain our soul, the better off we are when we leave the soul, and the better off we are when we have these mortal existences, these experiences. And so that's what that newest book is about, that I have about the spiritual war and how the unseen energetic world affects us. And it's full of tips and strategies to maintain and create a healthy soul. So let's do it. For instance, you're in this toxic room. What can I do? Well, first of all, our minds are our most powerful assets. Our minds are creative. They're God's source energies, and we can do a lot with them. Teenagers are really good at throwing around their energies, right? So when we have these teenagers throwing around their energies, we know that we can also control our energies. So you go into this toxic room, it's going to be hostile. You can do a few things. One is you can literally just visualize, take a moment, visualize maybe a violet flame going up through the room, from below the ground, up through the room and through the roof. You can bring down a rain of salt. These are all visualization techniques. We all have the ability to do it. Some of us do it better than others because some of us have practiced more than others. At the same time, we all have a first day, period. We all have a first day with everything that we learn, everything that we try. So keep practicing, and you can simply just close your eyes and just visualize this rain of salt filling the room, bringing up a violet flame to clean and clear the room. Another fun strategy is bringing down, and it's a little bit more sophisticated, a rain of pink rose petals. So a rose petal is very thin, and as it wafts down, it can cut the energy as it wafts down. And pink is a soft energy. So you're cutting the energy and you're softening the energy at the same time. You can do this in all of your own spaces, in any community space that you are in. I can't actually go and do this to my neighbor's house without their permission. But if I'm going to go into my neighbor's house, I can do it around me and whatever may be affecting me. Another big part of this unseen energetic world are the beings that reside to help us or maybe not help us.
Gotcha. Go ahead and tell us about some of those beings while you're at it, because I'm pretty sure I see them regularly.
You know, I'm with you on that. And it's kind of what I do a lot of the time. I know we have a little bit of a lag, so I'll pause here and there just to make sure I'm not just rambling on and on. So in the unseen energy,
I got you. I appreciate that.
Okay. And, or just, let me know in the chat or something like that. So we live in the third dimension. Time, space, gravity, which anchors us to have these mortal experiences that we can see, touch, hear, taste, and smell. When we leave the third dimension, our physical bodies die. Our soul energy, what animates these bodies, has to go somewhere. It's supposed to go from the third dimension to the fourth dimension, which is now known as the lower astral. It's known as the hells, limbo, those types of concepts. And once we leave our body, we go there, and we're supposed to then go to the higher realms to go back home to the heavens, the higher dimensions, whatever you want to call it. But something happened along the way, and I'm going to say several millennia ago. When the Luciferic forces left the light of God, they're like, oh, snap. What are we going to do? We have no energy. They utilized God's source energy. When they left the light of God, they cut themselves off. So now they're looking at us humans like, hey, we can utilize their energies to sustain us. So they do this through a number of ways. One, they set up shop in that fourth dimension, that limbo, or what we now call the hells. And they have programmed us to believe that this is where bad people go, etc. This is where the land where ghosts reside and these other beings and entities. And sometimes there's an overlay in what we can see through our technologies, through our psychic senses, that we can see that they are impacting us. So there's so many different entities and beings, and I'm curious about what you had seen walking up and down your property, because a big blob, it could be many different things. And you said it was like a translucent shadow almost?
Yeah, it was like, I wouldn't say circular, it was more like an oval shape. But when it made contact with the ground, it was kind of like, it almost had like a solidity to it. Like the way it made contact with the ground, it looked like it was almost gliding across the ground. Right?
And
I thought to myself, I thought to myself, that's got to be a pretty powerful one to have that much molecular structure, if you want to call it that.
Yes. I'm not sure what it is. Did it have any form? It was just a big oval?
Yeah, it didn't have any other form other than that. You could see within that oval shape, the oval shape was almost like an auric field would be. It wasn't static. It wasn't staying in one place. It had movement to it. It was kind of like moving around a little bit. Within it, you could see the outline of a humanoid figure, but it wasn't very clear, and it wasn't a different color, nor was it a different level of translucidity to the bubble that it was in. So that made it difficult to tell.
Do you feel like that form inside there was like, I'm going to call it like bony and scraggly, or was it just a form?
It wasn't bony and scraggly. It was just a body. I am not sure if I've ever told you this, but where I live used to be a plantation house a long time ago. And before that, this is where a lot of like the Amerindians and indigenous tribes and stuff would come, and they would get off of their little canoes and stuff, and they would camp out. So there was a lot of bloodshed that was on this beach. And seeing beings walking up my driveway, which is just really a sandy gap that leads to the beach, is not something that has been uncommon throughout my entire life. I mean, we've had banshees and stuff. You see them frantically running up and down, screaming. And because they get stuck, because of all the sand grains and stuff, they get stuck in that area and they can't get their way out of it. Right.
Interesting. I kind of wonder if those weren't some type of ghost energies. I'm not sure. They can really impact us. And sometimes, like I remember I had a client who came to me, and it was a mom, and she said, my daughter came home from college, and she says that she keeps having these murderous thoughts towards her sister. And in that process, the family, I'm going to say, it was a normal family. There wasn't any violence. There wasn't any abuse, just normal. And I said, well, let me remote view your home and let's see what's happening. And so the concept of remote viewing is I have the ability to project my consciousness to another time, space, and location. So what I did was she gave me her address, and I started to look into her home. Now, I'm not looking at her dirty laundry or the dirty dishes or anything like that. I'm looking through the ethers to see what's impacting her daughter. And I found it. And it was actually kind of astonishing, because this incident had me realize that even the dark side has a political hierarchy to them. Every institution, every governmental agency, every business, everything has a recruitment department, an HR department, right? So why would the dark side not? They need new recruits too. And so I'm looking through the house, remote viewing the house through the ethers. And that's when I see 3 ghosts and a standard black magician. And I was asking about the shape of the guy that you were seeing, because a standard black magician is like this bony guy, and he's got scraggly hair and some long nails, that kind of thing. So I'm looking at this situation. There's these 3 ghosts, and they're basically standing in a row, and they're puppeting the young woman. And I was able to, in this work that I do, I will create a containment field, and I put the 3 ghost energies inside of one containment field, and I put the black magician, which is a low-key harmful entity. What he's doing is he was teaching these 3 ghosts how to do what he does to the humans, to create strife, to create chaos, to create havoc. And he was instructing these 3 ghosts to put these murderous thoughts in this young woman's head. And by the way, she had been to some psychiatrists and other things. They've tried everything, and nothing was stopping these murderous thoughts from entering her head. And that's when she had called me, because traditional medicine wasn't working in this case. So I've got them in a containment field, which means they can't break out. And I want to address the 3 ghost entities first. First of all, a ghost is a former human who is stuck between heaven and earth. He is stuck in the 4th dimension, in those hells that I was talking about. So now I'm asking them questions like, why are you doing this to this young woman, right? They had all died. They had not crossed over. They were all atheists. So they didn't believe in a life ever after, and they were languishing in the 4th dimension. That's when this black magician basically overrode them, and I'm going to say capture or soul nap them. This is where having a healthy soul is a really big deal. If you have a healthy soul, they can't do this. So if these three ghosts were not complying with this black magician guy, they would get punished and they could not escape him. He had tethers to them, basically ties that bind. So there was no escaping. And if they failed, if they weren't successful, their soul energy was harmed and extracted. And literally, it's like being whipped in physical life. So they had no recourse other than compliance with this black magician. So once I got that story, I started, and I literally had the angels come in, and we'll talk about angels in a little bit, come in and cross over these three ghost souls, which, by the way, they were extremely relieved to have been freed from him and to stop causing harm to this young woman. That was a big deal for them. Now I go to this black magician and I'm asking him, what the heck, right? Why? And I'm learning from him that if he could turn these three ghost souls into black magicians, he would ascend in his ranks. He would become more powerful. He would have more tools at his disposal. It's no different than being in a military promotion kind of thing. So that's where he was at with that. And so I crossed him over also. And I also looked for this guy's bosses because I knew he had to have bosses of his own. I was able to pull in those bosses too. And once I did that, they all got crossed over into the higher realms, God source energy. It's not mine to decide where they go, but I know the higher realms can handle that. That's way above my pay grade. Once I did that, that young lady has been free and clear. There's not been an issue for what she was dealing with. And it was like a switch flipped off for her. She wasn't dabbling in the dark arts or anything like that. She was a college student and she was at a college bar doing, college things. And when you become drunk or inebriated, not even full on drunk, these dark things can gain access. They call it spirits for a reason. So any type of addiction can potentially give access to these dark entities to harass us. And addictions can look like many things. It can look like an alcohol addiction. It can look like a substance abuse addiction, even video game addictions, dark video games where there's a lot of killing going on. The dark side can enter the home through the etheric cables of the energy of that violent video game. Think about that. I'm working with someone right now who's got a son who's been incessantly playing, I'm not going to name the name, this game. And she realized that it created a literal portal in her son's room. So now we've got to get the game away from the kid, but the kid has an addiction to the game. If there's anything that you can't put away or put down and walk away from without constantly thinking about it or without constantly wanting to grab it, it can be a form of an addiction. It's not a judgment call. It's just an awareness. We all have something. And when we can learn what it is and how it affects us, we take our power back.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it because I say it all the time and nobody wants to hear it. People will straight get up and leave once I start talking about it. But, those are the ones that are affected by it. So they can't hear that. Yeah. There's no way they can hear that.
And if you're offended by what I just said, don't be offended, but look at it with a discerning eye. Does it ring true for you? Why or why not? And get your why and why not. I'm always asking questions. And so when I'm working with somebody and I'm removing these nefarious entities, I'm always asking them questions because there's knowledge in that. Now, I also know that these guys will give me two lies and a truth, right? Just enough information to make me think that they're giving me accurate information when maybe they're not. So I always have to kind of vet that information, because it's not always true. And sometimes they always like to trick. They like to shapeshift also. And this is another important element to really understand in this unseen energetic world. These dark beings, many of them are shapeshifters. Many of them can read our minds, our wishes and desires. What do you do about that? So for example, if you feel, you see, your sense an entity, or maybe you're calling in, I usually use Archangel Michael as the generic form of, let's say I'm calling in Archangel Michael. And how do I know I have the true Archangel Michael? How do I know I don't have an imposter being or a holographic being there? And if I can't see them, I need to learn how to sense if that's them or not. So just kind of sink into it and just kind of like feel, and I'm going to say let go a little bit. Just take a breath, feel their energy, feel how Archangel Michael feels, okay? It's hard at first, but again, these are spiritual practices and we are allowed to practice. We're going to get tricked sometimes. We get tricked in every aspect of life at times. And so what you can do is, let's say I've got Archangel Michael, I'm requesting his help, and I can't see him, or if I do see him, better yet, I'm going to do a few things to vet that it's really him. He's the real deal. One is you can pour frankincense or myrrh essential oil on him, and this is a visualization practice. If you can use salt on him, you're just going to visualize yourself pouring these substances on him, because the mind is very powerful. You can bring up a violet flame, and if he stays true to form, or if he shapeshifts, disappears, or you feel like there's something not quite right, know that you've got an imposter and the angelic realms can come and take him away. If you have an imposter, don't think that you weren't worthy enough of the true Archangel Michael's presence. Know that you dodged a bullet. The light side is very happy when we can dodge these bullets because it keeps us safe. We have been programmed to believe that we should never, vet these guides, these higher realmed entities that are here to assist us, because we don't want to offend them. Well, you know what? They're offended when we're not vetting them, because this is how these dark ones gain access to us. So if you're ever working with a spiritual practitioner, ask how they vet their spiritual team. Ask them any questions you want about how they conduct their business, how they clear themselves between clients, because your soul health is worth it. You're paying for a service. Even if you're not paying for that service, you still deserve to have those questions answered. If you don't like those answers, you have every bit of a right to walk away. Now, when we come from the third dimension, we go to the fourth dimension. We want to cross over to the higher realms. We don't want to be a ghost. A lot of we've been pre-programmed to believe a lot of times that a ghost energy, that maybe they had unfinished business to do. We give them all sorts of excuses to languish in the fourth dimension, and frankly, that's harmful to the soul. Unfinished business, they died too young, they don't deserve to be crossed over. Even the world's worst criminals, pedophiles, etc., they need to go back to God's source energy. In my house, there are many mansions, is that famous quote. Well, what if those mansions are actually different dimensions? So are you and I going to go to the same place as maybe a Jeffrey Epstein? Probably not. You can look at those as different dimensions, different mansions. I think the word mansion was used to help that human mind construct grasp this concept of dimensions. So we want to communicate with the higher realms to clean and clear and keep us safe. Angels are the biggest assets we have in humanity. We all have access to angels, and we all have the right to have access to angels. Angels, but we want to be specific, angels from the higher realms. We don't necessarily need any fallen angels coming our way. So angels are here to serve humanity. They're here to assist us. We've been pre-programmed to believe that maybe my problem isn't worthy of bothering an angel. Maybe I'm not worthy. My problem's not big enough. Maybe I got to save all my little angel brownie points, for the big ask. No, angels earn karma also. They earn karma. So if you have a team of angels that have been, I'm going to say, assigned to you, and you're not using them and they're standing around twiddling their thumbs, you are not helping the angels ascend into their ranks. They are dormant. They are static. They would like to ascend too, but they cannot violate spiritual law. What that means is that we have to ask. And honestly, start small. Ask for the little things. Now, they can't violate spiritual law, like I said, but we can start making asks. We can ask them to help us get a good parking space. Hey, angels, I'm running late. I need to get my kid, whatever. I really need a good parking space. We can ask them for literally a good sale on blue jeans. Okay. I need some new jeans, guys. I don't have much money. I want to find jeans for let's say $20. Okay. Ask them for the help and listen to your intuition, and you'll be guided there. It takes practice. It takes practice speaking to them, and you can speak to them in your mind's eye. You don't have to go outside and be inside of a shopping mall and ask the angels, hey, angels, out loud, I need some help. No, do it in your mind. We don't want to have people think you're too crazy, right? So ask them for these things. Ask them for the big asks also. Use them every single day. The more you utilize the help of angels, the more your spiritual team grows. The more your spiritual team grows, the more you connect to God, the divine, God source energy. And your soul is worth it. The more you start to raise your vibrational frequency, because you're always in the presence of angels. When I go to places that I suspect have dicey energy, for example, in a hospital. I was in a hospital today. A friend of mine got into an accident, and I was helping out. Hospitals, if you ever want to go to a haunted place, go to a hospital. They're very haunted. You don't need to go lock yourself into an insane asylum that's been closed for 20 years and put on your equipment. Just go to a hospital, go to a liquor store. That simple. So what I do is I bring in my entourage of angels, and I have one in front of me, one on each side of me, and then behind me, and then as many others that I can garner. And I make the request to clean and clear all lower vibrational frequencies, energies, and entities that may come my way while I'm here until the moment I get back home. What this does is it gives them the job. They can clear the energy around. I can't have them clear energies that are not affecting my space. So if I'm in the main lobby of a hospital, I can't go to some stranger's room and clear that energy from a stranger's because I don't have his permission. But I can do this. As we do this, it's not only helping us, but it's a spiritual service to all the workers that are there. The people that come and go get help also. And in this hospital, it was interesting because there's a lot of drug addicts there. And they're in my space, these drug addicts. There's 4 or 5 of them, and I don't know what they needed or whatever, but they were definitely on something. Cleaning and clearing that space could clean and clear them a little bit. Maybe it gave them a little bit of a reprieve, because when you're that much of an addict, you are heavily inhabited. Now, cleaning and clearing them because they're in my space is one thing. Once they leave, those entities are now out of their life, but it doesn't mean that more can't come their way, because they have no auric field about them. You mentioned the auric field around that being. The auric field is like our energetic field around us. So if you've ever had felt like you're getting sick and you just kind of felt it coming in, and then for some reason you're able to just kind of bumped that cold or flu out of you, that's your auric field protecting you. If we have a weakness within our auric field, that virus can penetrate our auric field and hit our body. So somebody who is a drug addict probably doesn't have much of an auric field, it's a problem, but there's not much I can do about it. But at that moment in time in that hospital, I could clean and clear that space. So we have these tools. Always, always, always ask for your angels. Years ago, I had a group of angels come to me for one of the first times ever. And they gave me some messages, and I'm like, whoa. But one of them was, impose upon your angels. Don't not ask us for help. We're here, we're listening. we have to abide by spiritual law. For example, if I'm going into a job interview and I really want the job, I can't tell the angels, make sure I get that job. What I can do is I can ask the angels to accompany me into the job interview. I can ask them to clear the energy in that room so the person or persons interviewing me hear my words with their heart and their ears so they know my true intention. Because when we do that, it helps the other people to not have a miscommunication, thinking we may have misspoke. I can also ask the angels to help me guide my words for the best possible answers. And you can use them for so many things. If you have a child who's dealing with night terrors or sleep paralysis, or you're dealing with night terrors or sleep paralysis, start bringing the angels into your home. Ask for an entourage of them. Ask for a choir of them. Ask for 1,000 of them from the higher realms, and have them clean and clear and keep you safe at night while you're sleeping. Nobody deserves to deal with sleep paralysis or night terrors. And any doctor, and doctors will often say, oh, that's just a normal part of childhood. No, it's not normal for your child to be terrorized. And what planet have we made that normal? Seriously, they should not be terrorized. Often what's happening is that there are these dark entities harassing the person in the sleep state. And that needs to stop, because the dark side will violate our free will, unlike the higher realms. And this is a big part of that spiritual war that's affecting all of us. This is really an important concept to understand. We can ask for their help to remove these dark entities every single day, every single hour. It doesn't matter. And the more we do it, the more opportunities we have to really learn and grow and discern in adding to our spiritual tool belts. This is just one of many things that we can do.
Right. You've said so much stuff, and there's so much things that I could comment on. I mean, okay, let me start here. So, would you agree with the statement that each dimensional plane has lower and higher entities, and that every minute of the day there are beings that are reaching out to us from any of these dimensions? Because just people think that because, okay, let's say the 6th dimension, for example, they say, okay, 6 is a higher number than 4. That means it must be good. Is that true, or is that not true?
I'm going to go with a wishy-washy answer and say yes and no.
Right. Well, there's a reason I'm saying that, because
yeah, in theory.
Sorry, Laura. I just want to put this out there. I used to know a guy. I don't want to say the band that he played with. He was in 2 very popular bands that were like 80s metal bands and stuff like that. And basically, wherever he went, he was surrounded by these orbs. He would go on stage. Photographers would have a hard time catching a good, clear photograph of him because of these orbs. If he was at home in his barn, he actually has, or used to have, pictures of himself on Facebook with his arms out, and hundreds of orbs are just all around him. I've had that similar experience when I used to play on stages. It seemed like the more people that were in the crowd, the more orbs would be nearby. And you would only see them when it was hazy or there was smoke running and the lights were coming through, especially the red and the blue lights. When they were coming through, you would see these orbs in front of you and you kind of be like, what is that? You know, and then, or you'd see them in pictures of yourself, and it would be during moments, especially if there was like video and stuff, there would be moments where I checked out and I started doing something that was magical, unknown to me. And I would feel like something came down and it would touch the top of my head, almost like my crown chakra opened involuntarily. And an energy was coming through my entire body and it would take over and I would not know what it is I did. And I've had experiences during COVID. I would on my other Instagram page, I would be on there making music and entertaining kids, just talking to them and having them participate and stuff. And there were people who were afraid because while I was getting inspiration, these orbs would show up behind me. And I would start coming up with these ideas for things. And I've always known that there's a certain level to it where those things are concerned. So that's specifically why I asked you about the sixth dimension. And that's why I want to know this question, because I tell people the music that you listen to can put spirits on you. Early in my coaching career, I had 2 clients a year apart who were sketching the same entity. Now, they were using drugs, but they were also listening to the same music on their playlist, the same songs, same artists, right? And so
Yeah.
the same way things can get on you through social media or through the television, then, you know, you have to monitor your consumption of these things, because you don't know what's clean and what is unclean. And oftentimes it's hard to even listen to a song and use your discernment and say, oh, this probably has demons on it, if you want to use that word. It probably has dark entities bound to it, because the music sounds good, because there's a part of your brain that loves how it sounds. So it makes it difficult to detect some things. It's not like listening to a Miley Cyrus song versus a Norwegian death metal song. You can tell the difference in the Norwegian death metal real quick. But the same entities are in the Miley Cyrus track because somebody has preyed on that track, or because these beings from a particular dimension have transmitted information to the songwriters and the producers and the whatnot, right? So I've said a lot. I'll let you take over.
No, you bring up a really good point. A lot of the knowledge we get is imparted from these unseen energies. So when you were talking about the orbs around you while you're entertaining children during COVID, and you're getting these creative ideas and these orbs are around you, how did you feel? Was it uplifting? Was it scary? Right?
Well, the thing about that is I have always been a good songwriter, so I've never felt afraid. But this has been about 2 years since I have released anything, because I wanted to get out of it, because the stronger my energy gets, the less of that I actually want. So I've had to give up an entire side of myself that came naturally to me since I was a child. And I can't tell you, I've never really known the difference, but it's only when I started wanting to get away from it that I started noticing that when I had certain ideas that would come to me, it was being transmitted to me, and it wasn't a moment of creativity, so to speak. And so the more I have become familiar with recognizing what is creativity and what is the muse, I kind of say, no, I'm not interested in that. And what I've noticed is that oftentimes, like, let's take disputes where an artist will sue another over a song. It's almost like a trickster energy is involved there, because it was transmitted to one person and one person didn't fully get it. And that entity or collection of entities wanted this particular thing to be sent into human consciousness. And so it gave it to someone else too. Right?
Really astute observations that you've had on this. The other element that's extremely commendable is you didn't let your ego supersede this aspect of you, right?
Right.
There was something in there that your higher self said, this isn't right, this is uncomfortable. And I can only imagine how difficult that was to give that up. It doesn't mean you're giving it up forever. Maybe not, right? Working on cleaning and clearing and connecting, to the higher realms is a really big deal. I think there is good music out there. You bring up a really good point. Like, how do you know? And I get a lot of people asking me about these YouTube tracks that are supposed to be like, high vibrational frequency soundtracks,
binaural
certain
beats and 528
beats.
hertz meditation tracks. Yeah, a lot of those are sketchy.
A lot of those are sketchy. And so my question to anybody who's listening to those, how do you know they are what they say they're supposed to be? The person that created them, do they have the technology to say, yeah, this is good? Or, right? We don't know. And it kind of makes me go back to the classical music elements, because I think that stood the test of time. A lot of people might find it boring, but if you want to work on clearing your house of these heavy energies, dark entities, etc., playing Mozart or something like that can be helpful, along with a lot of other elements. When we clear our spaces, yes, we can do it psychically, but we also want to reinforce it with the physical components, because we are living in a physical world. This is why a lot of practitioners have crystals, etc., right? They're there to protect us and keep things clear. And it's a process, but you bring up such a great point. Now, orbs, from what I understand, can be many things, and it depends on the energy of the orb, if it's positive, negative, or even neutral. Sometimes an orb can be a ghost energy, sometimes it can be an angelic energy, sometimes it can be a demonic energy. And we just kind of have to use a little bit of discernment with it. So sometimes when we see them, especially if we see or sense them without the technology, how does it feel? Like, I remember when my dad died, 20 years ago, which is crazy to think about. He showed up in my bedroom at 4:30 in the morning, and I could see this orb that I knew was his energy pushing my ceiling fan around. I knew it was him, and I was in this space where I just saw him as a ball of energy. Now, my dad did not cross over right away. He lingered as a ghost, and I didn't know why. And that's a whole nother topic. But eventually I crossed him over. And then when I did that, that ceiling fan would stop spinning randomly. I mean, there's no breeze in the bedroom or anything. Everything's shut up at night. And the fan would just kind of rotate. And it would go counterclockwise, the opposite direction of the normal fan would go. So I knew it really wasn't, a normal thing. So he would show up as an orb, but also sometimes the divas, the Devic kingdom, the fairies, and the elementals can show up as orbs too. So they can be many things, but if you're unsure, you can ask them to please leave, or actually just tell them to leave. Don't use please. And if they stick around, they're probably not good, because the light side has to abide by your wishes. So if they leave, I'm requesting that all these orbs leave right now. And if they're sticking around, they're probably not for your greater good. And then you can bring in the angelic realms to remove the orbs. And then you can ask those good ones to please return. You can pour salt on them, frankincense on them, or whatever, just to vet them. They can be many things. But when it comes to music, there's something inherently primal with music to the human soul, where I think the dark side can manipulate it quite easily. And we look at the history of the music industry, and the concept of sex, drugs, rock and roll. Those are all lower vibrational frequencies, and that is something to think about when we're listening to music. Now, does the music make you happy? Does it bring joy? You have to learn how to feel what it means for you.
That's a complex one for a lot of people, because
it is.
If you think about the way gratitude feels, if you think about the way that looking into the eyes of your lover feels, if you think about how looking at your baby feels, and then you contrast that to how good you feel when you listen to your favorite song, but your favorite song is, I don't know, Marilyn Manson, sex,
right.
sex, sex, blah, 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 whatever. What's that? What's those lyrics to that song?
I know
something about party,
yeah.
sex, sex, and don't forget the violence.
Yeah.
you can feel good about that. You can feel really hype about that, about the music, and still not realize, because you're just not there intuitively or energetically to tell that there's a difference between those things, right? And
right.
A lot of my self-sabotage work, my clients, I make them stop listening to certain things. I make them stop watching TV and stuff like that, because that cuts off those channels.
Yes.
And they have to then go inward. They spend enough time with themselves that their sensibilities, they know what their soul is. And so that kind of falls under the category of what you talk about with being like having a healthy soul. If you don't have a healthy soul, you don't know that your soul is sick, right?
Right.
So
and you
that's
don't know
a complex issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a really complex issue for people. And okay, so let's use MK Ultra as an example here. A lot of people still, because of conspiracy theorists that are just following a narrative, they don't understand how MK Ultra works. Well, MK Ultra is just a form of covert hypnosis that is kind of like spell casting when it's done to the population through the television and through music. It is using your brain, your limbic system, to create scenarios by making you witness something or experience something emotionally. That's what that is. So a really dumb thing that happened to me the other day, one of my favorite songs growing up was Heart of Mine by Boz Scaggs. And so because I don't listen to music, I guess anybody can go YouTube that video. But because I don't listen to music, songs show up in my mind all the time as a means of telling me that something significant happened during a particular time of my life where my consciousness was bound to a memory, and there's this song, right?
Right.
And so that's one level of awareness that a lot of people don't get to, but that's the benefit of not listening to music. But when you look at the video for Heart of Mine, there was so much Masonic and MK Ultra symbolism in the video. There's typical things like a ballet dancer, and then all of a sudden she does that dance that they do where they bend over and she's basically showing you her crotch, but the way her legs are positioned, it's the shape of the Baphomet and things like that. Yeah. There's the black and white checkerboard all over, and you think that he's just trying to make a phone call to somebody in the video, and right next to him is just a black and white tiles on the wall, but it's everywhere, right? So
it is
these songs. Yeah, I'll let you say something after this, but these songs that are a part of the MK Ultra programming that are trying to hijack people's concepts of how they should deal with a breakup, like Heart of Mine. If you go analyze the lyrics, you realize it's about somebody that's missing someone that they're no longer with. Something must have happened, and he's trying to have a conversation with his heart and try to tell it how to feel. Basically saying that you'll never be the same again. Your heart will perpetually be broken. You'll never get over this person. The way that I should act when I'm disappointed or hurt in a relationship is pure disappointment, borderline suicidal, is never going to get any better. These are the messages that they're sending to you. So that is the purpose of MK Ultra in the media, right? So anybody can go and then look at that video and see what we're talking about and get an idea and a deep understanding. But I'll hand it back over to you because I know you have a lot to say.
You are so right on all of this. It's Hollywood, it's music, it's in our commercials, it's in the symbolism, even in the buildings that in our cities, it's embedded everywhere. And it's not, I don't want to have people run around paranoid all the time, but awareness is power. It gives us our power back. And you're talking about the lyrics and the words of songs. Words have power, words have meaning, right? And are you familiar with Dr. Masaru Emoto?
Yeah, and I think that most of our listeners would be familiar with Masaru Emoto's work as well, the experiments with water and things like that.
Yeah.
The words.
And look at what intention and words can do to water crystals. These bodies are mostly water crystals. And looking at Dr. Masaru Emoto's work, and I studied it a bit, I'm going to say like probably most people, like, bits and pieces and here and there, and read the books and that kind of stuff, but it makes sense. And so I remember years ago, we had a flood in our house, and I thought, if I take the words that are important to me and my family, and we write them on the walls and the floors, love, health, wealth, happiness, all joy, gratitude, those words become embedded within the home. And so we had this flood, and it was kind of funny because we got a whole remodel out of it. And then basically the little water tube to the refrigerator broke in the middle of the night and flooded everything. But when we were doing the construction, I had the whole family start finding words that were important to us as a family, to them as an individual. And I just bought a ton of Sharpies, and they wrote all over the floors because the flooring was ripped up. The walls had to be repainted. And the whole house was filled with this. And also the water heater. Since we're all water, if we can take our water heater and fill it with those powerful words that are known to elevate us, right? Gratitude, good health, blessings, that kind of thing. The water in the water heater gets imbued with that as well. And so what's coming through the faucets is basically blessed water. And the water that's blessed, it just keeps coming and coming and coming. It starts to getting embedded within the walls and the floors of the home. So that's just kind of like a little tip if anybody is ever doing any remodeling project, no matter how big or small. You can even write these words under the cabinet so they're underneath the countertop, because now where you prepare your food, you're preparing your food on top of these blessings that can help clear the food.
Right. Yeah, and you just reminded me of something else I wanted to say about the lyrical content of things as well. Because if you notice, as a songwriter myself, when I put things that are positive, it doesn't work the same as if I put something that was negative. It just doesn't. Yeah. As soon as you try to put positive lyrics to a chord progression, it just doesn't work. And there's something very strange about that to me. I mean, I've been trying to figure it out for years, but there's something that's very intoxicating about the negative. And so I know that somewhere there is an entity saying, look at this son of a bitch. He's figuring me out, right? Or he's figuring out the game. And so that's why it's been really important for me personally to take a break from it, to ignore all transmissions and say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to write that song. You can go to somebody else. But I guess that's why there's not too many songs out there with overtly positive lyrics that have been like hits over the years. You get what I'm saying? Because it just doesn't work. It seems like the tones that we are chosen, that we've been given, within our spectrum of hearing, just don't work with anything except for negativity for one reason or another. You know what I'm saying?
I do. What do you feel about, and I love this conversation, music without words? Again, their chord progressions, etc. Is it still the same without the words for the most part, or do you feel like that is a little bit different?
You see, I think that is different, but if you're also talking about the time period of music, you're going to talk about the Chinese dynasty, then there was also that dichotomy there as well, where there was the higher and the lower, and Confucius said that the type of music, the tone of the music, even the length of the note, the way you extended it, held it, you embellished that note, you bent it or you slid into it, or however, that all made a difference. Because if your spirit wasn't pure, if your soul wasn't clean, then you were not qualified to play the higher level music, right?
Yeah.
And basically what Confucius said is that a sick society has sick music. A sick culture has sick music. And so people will be sick and they will be morally corrupt. They will be spiritually bankrupt. And, you know, they will have no values whatsoever. So we see that happening right now. But another thing to add to that is like, okay, if you listen to Niccolo Paganini and they talk about how he was influenced by the devil, you can hear with his note choices and the tempo at which he played, the timbre of the instruments, you can hear that there's darkness that was coming through him. If you listen to some songs by Mozart, you hear the same furiousness, but then there's also contrasts. So I think classical music and like the Baroque era and stuff where they started adding in like 7-string guitars and things like that, and things with lower pitch, if you study that, you hear the darkness, and then you also hear the contrast in other compositions. So it isn't even that inherently one artist like Bach or somebody like that was bad or being influenced all by dark entities. It could have been they just couldn't tell the difference, but they knew that they were channeling, is my point. And they knew that what they were putting into notation to give to other generations was a transmission of some kind from these higher entities that were just different. I guess their consciousness was different, so their way of describing these things would have been a lot more limited than our language of today. To put that into words, to say this is how I feel when I am communicating with this thing or not. But they were also very simplistic, so they were like, everything's a demon, or everything's an angel. So I think that there's that element to it. And also with the advent of electronic tuners now, where we can tune everything to 440 hertz, they were off key with a lot of their things. And that was gentler on the auditory cortex, which gives you a more soothing feeling. It has nothing to do with the frequencies and tuning your instrument to 432 to match the Earth's frequency and stuff like that. Because if you play A on an instrument that's tuned to 440 hertz, and then you play it on an instrument that's 432, it's a different frequency. So frequencies just loop over in a sequence. There's no magic to it, and it doesn't make something better just because you've tuned it to 432. It just makes it easier on the ear, easier on the brain. It doesn't make it less negative or more positive, essentially. And that's a common conspiracy myth that's out there.
Interesting, because I remember hearing something a while ago, and I'm going to just slaughter this concept, and so I'm hoping you can help me rebuild it, where the music industry shifted the standard hertz to bring it down lower.
Yeah, they say that that's Joseph Goebbels or whatever his name is, the Nazi guy. They say that he did that on purpose. But basically what I'm saying is...
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but interesting.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I wonder if my piano is on. So I'm trying to get the volume on. This is a very old piano here. I don't know if you can hear that or not. That's a C.
Okay.
And that's in 440 hertz. So that would be, if I play this C here, that typically will be like, okay, that's 528 hertz. But if I take this button and I transpose it down, I play that same note, it just changes the frequency. So C, if my instrument was tuned to a better so-called frequency, it would just be a different note. So it's all about what that frequency is associated with. It's not about tuning the whole instrument to something and that fixes the problem or it makes it worse. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And I had heard a while back that the music industry had changed it. I don't know how true that is, but part of me is like, well, why wouldn't they? And
it doesn't make,
you're right,
it doesn't make any difference. All it does is it makes the 7-tone scale a lot easier to work with, because then things are in a more logical order. When you look at the keys of a keyboard and you have the black notes and the white keys, that's all it does. It doesn't actually, like, there's no conspiracy to agitate you on purpose or anything like that. Yeah.
No, I love it. By the way, we all have stuff to learn, right? We never should stop learning. So I'm loving this conversation. I've learned a ton in this conversation. And you're absolutely right with these, in fact, I've even, and again, not going down too many rabbit holes, but even I was seeing something, maybe it was on Instagram or whatever, about the Oreo cookie and the symbols inside the cookie. And it's like, that's interesting. I don't know, but signs and symbols and tones and frequencies these are all energies, and they all impact us. And if you are going into a place and you feel that your energy has shifted, you got to ask yourself why, what's going on, what's around it, and what can you do to enhance your energetic field. And, we talked about auric fields a moment ago, but technically we all have an auric field. Some are stronger than others. And when I go out in places, I have learned how to retract my auric field so I can bring it closer to me. So I don't want to bump auras with like 50 people if I can just shrink my auric field. And when I'm home, I can expand it. It's not that I'm consciously doing that, but I tend to have a kind of a bigger field. But when I'm out in public, I will definitely contract that auric field because I don't want to be bombarded by all these different frequencies. And human frequencies or whatever other frequencies.
Yeah. I think within the spectrum of frequency, there's so much to be said, and there's so much that is undiscovered. Just like what I was just demonstrating to you with the notes of the keyboard, there's a lot of stuff that isn't understood. And like the symbol in the Oreo cookie is an interesting phenomenon, because if you look at Cymatics, which is a book by Hans Jenny, where it's the one where he puts the sand on the metal plate and he vibrates it at certain frequencies and it forms certain patterns. Right. So it's like when you eat an Oreo cookie, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe that is one of my conspiracy theory friends is out there knows exactly what the symbol is. But if it is the Knights Templar or whatever they say it is, then so be it. How does that affect your consciousness by eating it? I have no idea. I just don't eat Oreo cookies because there's poison in the Oreo cookies. And if you poison your cells, then if you poison your cells, you poison your soul. And then back to you, what you're saying is energetic creatures can jump on you and get in you and cause problems in your life, right? So in my realm, that's probably why you're self-sabotaging, That's why you get up and you eat the 2 peanut butter sandwiches at midnight when you know you're trying to lose 20 pounds. Because the mono and diglycerides and the hydrogenated oil and the palm oil and all that stuff is poisoning you, and you have beings that are stuck to you because you have a weak consciousness and a weak soul, right?
They feed off of those poisons. It lowers our energetic field so they can feast off of us. These things are parasites. They're nothing more than a parasite. And there's many of them. We can talk about who's who in the spiritual zoo. There's so many different types of them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And we are inundated with so many harmful chemicals that, especially in the United States, the phthalates that are out in every cosmetic, every perfumey thing, they're banned in most of Europe. Why are they here, right? Mm-hmm. They're known to cause, they're endocrine disruptors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're here in the Caribbean too.
Yeah, and so we have to really, just because it exists doesn't mean it's good for us. And if it exists and we find it extremely tempting, it's probably really not good for us, right? Are you going to eat the Oreo cookie, or are you going to have a piece of broccoli? Right?
Exactly. I don't know. That Oreo cookie sounds pretty good.
There you go.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, do you have to go soon, or can we talk some more?
We can talk some more. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Because I want to make another comment. Right now, the work that you're doing is so relevant, and I'm so very thankful that we have someone like you, because one of the things I admire about you is that you're serious. You're like me. You're not taking any shit. You don't care what anybody else thinks. You're here to do what you're here to do so you can get out of here and move on with the rest of your life in the next lifetime. And I'm like that.
Right.
But right now, like, okay, so throw it back to the music and the Hollywood and the television thing. People say that not everything's bad or whatever the case is. And while that's true, the spectrum of what's good is very much smaller than what's bad. And let's say you're an innocent person. Let's say you might even be a Christian, and you are a screenwriter, and you, through your conscious creative ability, come up with a script that's appealing to you, but there's a love scene in it, or there's a murder scene in it. It's the same phenomenon. What you choose to do to describe that scenario and how you have your characters acting still conjures entities. It still conjures dark energy, and it still becomes dark magic that is putting a spell on whoever witnesses it, who consumes it, right? So
Yes.
There's so much stuff that's coming in through these portals that are being created, through these spells that are being casted on everyone, that I feel like that is one of the primary reasons. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the primary reasons why we are now not living on planet Earth. We are living on planet Demon. And when I go out into public, I see 90% demons now. I don't see people anymore. You look at them and they're checked out. Today, there were these... Today there were these kids passing by my house, and they had their buckets with them. They were going to go fishing or something like that on the beach. And they had that dark, murky energy surrounding them. You could see, like, behind one of them, there was like a trail of purple energy that was just hanging off of his back or something. Dark, ugly looking thing. But their eyes, they were checked out. And I was just like, it's everybody now. It's nobody's innocent anymore. It's just demons everywhere.
They've been left unchecked for so many millennia. That's the problem. These, I call them the Luciferic forces. I don't know, frankly, I don't know what the light side was thinking when this happened all these millennia ago. But there's a lot of soul harvesting that's happening. That's what you're talking about, is that these dark entities are harvesting our souls. If we don't make a choice right now, make a decision on what side of the fence we're going to sit on, a choice is going to be made for us. And I'm going to tell you right now, the light side cannot choose for us, because the light side has to abide by spiritual law. The dark side doesn't. And there's a lot of this stuff out there. And I mean, and you know, I don't know much about how Barbados population is like, but here there's all these chemicals, all these foods that just are mind numbing us. They're bringing us down. They cause a lethargy. They're causing severe obesity. I was reading a study recently that something like 70% of the children in the United States are clinically obese. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was a kid, I remember the one fat kid. And it's not a criticism, but I remember that one kid who was overweight. And I know why that person was overweight now, because of the abuses she had suffered. It was a form of protection, but now it's so different. 70%. I remember when I was teaching, because I used to be I was a middle school teacher, and I went down to the elementary school level for a bit. And my class, and this is maybe 15 years ago, my class, we had to do we're going to do this relay race amongst all the same grade levels. So I was teaching third grade, and the third graders were going to do relay race competitions between the different third grade classes. And we're out there practicing, and I had this one boy who was complaining that it hurt to run. I'm like, so run, have fun. And his mom came to my room the next day and chewed me out for making her son run. And I said, look, everybody can run to the best of their ability, period. And it's not like I was forcing him to run a mile in 6 minutes or anything like that, because we're all different. The next day we go out and we practice again. And this mom goes to the principal to tell on me for making her son run. And the principal's like, what the heck? Come on. And we're only talking a quarter of a lap at a time because it's a relay race. And so I guess the mom goes to the doctor and takes her kid to the doctor because now his muscles hurt. And she's concerned that I don't know, I broke a tendon on her kid or something. I don't know. But talk about really what that impact is when you don't let your child exercise. When we exercise, we're generally in nature. We're connecting to the ground, to the earth. We're connecting to God. We're communicating with one another. But this is a problem. We've got a lot of helicopter parents out there right now who don't let their children breathe because they are afraid, and they push their fears on their kids, which again affects their vibrational frequencies.
Yeah, that is so true. And I feel sorry for any mothers out there that are getting called helicopter parents because they're doing the right thing. And so there's somebody in their environment that's gaslighting them or crazy making.
That is true too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the way that people are with their children when they don't let them do anything, or they have to get a certain grade, or they have to compete with other children. I grew up with a kid like that. And how do I put this? He was like one of my best friends, but throughout our friendship from 7 years old to, I stopped talking to him when I was about 11 because we went to different schools. And by then he was just damaged. Completely damaged. I mean, I remember going over to his house, and his parents would put so much pressure on him that sometimes he would just stop and cry and bang his head on the wall. And what would they do? They would come out and quarrel some more because that will solve it.
Right.
And I think he even ended up being gay as well. Like, he was so traumatized that he just went the other way.
You just check out sometimes, right? You just check out. Nobody's had a perfect childhood, right? But some people, some of their sole purposes are to survive childhood. So once we can do that and we have some autonomy, we really need to learn how to break those negative family patterns. Because chances are these dark entities have been holding this negative family pattern for generations. One of the hardest things we can do is break a negative family pattern. And when we do that, we shift the energy throughout our entire family. And maybe it is breaking the family pattern means I've had to leave the abusiveness of my parents or whomever. Maybe breaking the pattern is I will not treat my children the way I was treated. That's a hard thing for parents to do because we know what we know as parents. So being conscientious of how we raise our children to give them that sense of enough rope to hang themselves, but not quite, right? You want to give them enough freedom, but you want to be able to reel them in those appropriate moments at the same time. Being a parent's tough. In fact, we all reincarnate here over.
Okay, I think we are frozen. Okay, so yeah, we had a screw up there with the Wi-Fi, but we're back. And you were saying?
I was just how hard it is to be parents into how hard it is for us to change our family patterns. And the goal of any parent should be how to do better than what was done to you, and to be able to teach our children a higher level of consciousness, spirituality in a safe manner. All too often we don't vet whom or what we're speaking with in these other dimensions. We wouldn't send our child off down the street to the park to go, 5-year-old by themselves, to go get ice cream from the ice cream truck. No, we go with them. So why is this any different in these other realms? And if we can learn how to keep our homes clean and clear as a spiritual practice, it really helps the child or the children in the home to really start life with a leg up, so to speak.
Yeah. There's no such thing as the perfect parent, but you can also do everything the right way, so to speak, and that kid's still going to go crazy. Kid's still going to end up being a narcissist. It's not because of anything you did.
But we can try, right? Sometimes it's really ingrained within that child's DNA, that spiritual DNA.
Yeah, it's true. So many times when I'm working with my clients and we're going through the paces, and sometimes you search that person's subconscious high and low. There's no childhood trauma. It's something that they decided when they were 20, 25, 30, that is impacting the way that they live their lives. No, they choose to be nasty, and like, you always have a choice as to who you want to be, but we aren't in control of those things when it comes to our children. We can only teach our children what we can, and we live in a dangerous time to have children because of mobile phones and the internet, the way it's set up now with social media, that it's not even safe to let society raise our children. They shouldn't have any input whatsoever. And I think, like as you call them, the Luciferian forces, they know exactly what's up. So that's their goal, to get people's kids to be wayward and have all these strange ideas about stuff. And that's just what we're against.
It's awful and criminal on a good day. I'm grateful that my children are all adults. Okay. I can't even imagine being parents of being a parent of a younger child right now because of all the bombardment. And I have a client who works as a social worker, and she was assigned to do social work for the teenage sex change unit in the state. And it's like, how can it even be a thing? And it's designed to separate the soul from God.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot out there like that.
Yeah, there's a lot we could say about that too. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody that has chosen homosexuality is a demon, but I see a lot of it too. I see a lot of people who are confused, and it ends up that we just can't work together because they're not willing to see how they're making a decision in terms of their sexuality that is actually siphoning away their vital energy and giving it over to stuff. They just say weird stuff. Like sometimes they talk to you in like a weird heavy metal voice. Like the demon will come out when you start saying certain things.
Yeah, the voice changes. It almost comes out a little electronic-y sounding. There's something else talking, right?
It's like kind of like that kind of tonality. Yep.
Yeah.
And they scream at you.
They do. And I'm going to talk about, I have another book coming out in a few weeks, actually, in addition to the one that just came out. And this is Battle of the Dark Side, my journey from school teacher to exorcist, because that's basically what I do. I remove these dark entities. That's the crux of what I do. And so when I work with somebody, we work together as a team because they need to see and sense what's happening too. And I have a way to show them how to do a little bit of remote viewing in a safe manner to see what's going on in their energetic field. And we remove those nefarious elements and we hand them off. But then the next step is how do you keep more from coming, right? We have to change the way we do business in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that we do that we think are harmless that may actually be little gateways for them to get in or work their way in here and there. So a big part of it is to learn how to raise our frequency and understand that we are all going to get hit from time to time. We all get knocked down a peg or two, but the more we can work on raising our frequency, creating a healthy soul, when we do get knocked down, we only got down a peg or two versus taking a big tumble down the stairs. And these are conscious efforts on our part, and it takes time and it takes effort, but isn't your soul worth it?
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, I see that. I can speak for myself. I can't speak for others. But how do you recognize the signs that you are in a spiritual war?
So yesterday I was feeling a lot of anxiety that I knew wasn't mine. I didn't sleep last night. I have a really busy day today. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there's something going on. And I have to stop and I have to assess the situation because I knew the anxiety wasn't mine and figure out where it was coming from. And sometimes it can come from people who I know that are maybe stressed or dealing with some tough stuff, and they sort of energetically can latch onto me. It's not a criticism, but you may feel like this anxiety that's not yours. You need to stop yourself and say, this is not mine. And to break that anxiety, you can do a few things. One, you can literally go run cold water on your wrists. Another one is the use of orange essential oil is really good because it creates when you smell oranges or any citrus, it changes the chemical frequency of the brain and it shifts the brain so that it can knock out the anxiety. Now, if your anxiety is because you aren't paying your bills or you're not doing what you're supposed to do or whatever that is, that's an internal anxiety that you have to figure out how to deal with. But if it's this energy that comes washing over you, it's, no, it's not yours. Clear your space. Take a moment. It only takes a few moments. If you find that you have like this brain fog about you, and I see this on people a lot, it looks like a cement like helmet going over them. It's brain fog. They're not thinking clearly. They, it's like getting stuck in the mud. You need to work on how do you remove that? Where did it come from? And, clearing yourself with salt or some other substances is good. Getting physical devices like maybe a proper scalar wave technology device, because there's also ones that are compromised. It's just never easy. Can help clean and clear and shore things up for us as well. There's a lot of, I see things out of the corner of my eye. What's that? You saw the thing in your camera that's on the, on your door. There's a lot of ways, and I want to make people paranoid, but once you know. And once we know, we can take our power back, and we have to understand that we're on the spiritual journey. We are spiritual beings before we were ever human beings. And Christ talked about life everlasting, not death everlasting. And within everything we study, there's going to be a positive and negative, a light and a dark. And you have to learn how to discern what rings true for you. And then you have to ask the question, why? Is it because it feels good, or is it because I know something now? We have to ask the questions, why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So let me ask you another question. And this is something that has been a theme for the year on this podcast. Do you think that ETs are dark entities? Do you think they're demons? What do you think?
I think most of them that come here are not for our greater good. I deal with them a lot. In particular, grays and reptilians, insectoids. There's another one I don't want to mention on air. So ETs are extraterrestrials, meaning they're not of the earth. We could also classify angels and these higher level beings as ETs, not of this earth. We have to be careful and we have to discern. I know for a fact that World War I and II was started by the reptilians. And I remember speaking at this conference, and sometimes speaking at conferences can be kind of dicey because there's a lot of speakers there that are not clean. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy comes on.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And so this guy comes up and he's a channeler. Now, first of all, the light side doesn't need to come inside my body to give you a message. Okay.
Exactly.
And so this channeler comes in and I'm like, oh dear, but I'm sitting here. And if I get up right now, people are going to notice that I leave. Right. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I'm sitting there and this guy, he says, well, I'm going to channel this reptilian. I forget the reptilian's name. I'm like, oh dear God. So I see this guy literally get scaly skin. He turned a dark green brown, is like a shadow overlay of him. And then this reptilian starts talking about how they started World War II to benefit humanity. And I'm like, oh, pick me. I got questions, right? How does that benefit? And everybody, and so this reptilian character was mumbling. And so I'm looking around the room. He's talking quietly and he's mumbling, and everybody's bowing down to him to hear. We're giving him consent to tap into our chakra system. And it's hypnotic, right? It's again MK Ultras. And this reptilian could sense that I was about to say or do something, and all of a sudden it started wrapping these tentacles around my legs to my chair so I couldn't move my legs. Now they're etheric, so not everybody can see them. I literally cut them off, and I got up and I basically said no, and I left. And like a half a dozen people left with me. But this is what happens, and this is how we become infected. So all those people in that hypnotic trance that were, when I got up and said no, I broke the trance for a few people, or maybe they were strong enough to have known, and we all left together. And we all got in the same car, by the way, afterwards. We're like, what the heck? But everybody else left behind, they got contaminated. And it was extremely irresponsible of this channeler, who is 100% corrupted at this point, because the light side, like I said, doesn't need us to have things go into our bodies to channel us so we can give these messages. And this guy would have these little parties in his hotel room every single night where he's channeling these messages to give everybody special information to make them feel special. And nobody could understand why I wouldn't go.
I understand.
And it was interesting. Some of the participants had some serious health problems that week. They extract. So, for example, a channeler or something like that, we get this information that's for free, right? These people that come to his room, this channeler's room, and he's giving us this great information, and we're feeling special, and we're in the crowd or whatever. Well, that information's not free. The payment comes due eventually, and they usually extract the payment through health and wealth. And that week, there were some serious health issues with a few of these participants. They probably came in with the weak auric field, and those were the low-hanging fruit for these reptilians that came in there. And it wasn't just that one reptilian. The whole hotel became infested with reptilians that week. And this was in a really, quote-unquote, spiritual location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't buy into much of the spiritual narrative, to be honest with you, because the New Age uses truisms to kind of hook you.
It's dangerous.
And I know people that have gotten into channeling and stuff, and now they're just not the same person. You can see it in their eyes. You can see their energy's dense. The way that they talk to you is very monotonal, and just they've lost their personality, and they've gone wacky. Every couple of months, they're off to Ecuador or India or wherever the hell it is to do some psychedelic ceremony or to join an ashram or something, and it's like they don't get it. I have to be honest, that is one of the downfalls of spirituality in general, especially if you learn it from social media, the internet, or books and stuff. The gurus can get you, and they will, through whatever process it is they use, they will bypass your ability to grow spiritual completely. You're just not going to do the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If you need a psychedelic to connect to the higher realms, how do you know you're really connecting to the higher realms? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I had what I thought was a mentor for a while. And it took me a little longer than I would have liked to admit right now that she was good until she wasn't good, because I was dealing with such a crazy crisis all those years ago with dishes flying off the countertop and being choked right here. I'm home alone. I'm getting choked so much I pass out, and all this weird stuff. And I wasn't dabbling in anything. I was just a school teacher. My husband's a business guy. We've got a few kids. We're living, San Diego lifestyle, middle-class Americana. And it's like, what the heck? And fast forward, what I learned is that the light side allowed these things to happen to me because I didn't know I was in training to do what I do today.
Do you think they were sending you birthday cards like, hey, Laura, something's coming? You just threw it in the trash. Right? Not knowing, you're just going along about your business. You're like, oh, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I would get so angry. It's like, how could you let my little girl, be tormented like this? And I mean, I could go on and on and on about it. But I realized that looking back, and hindsight is always such a wonderful tool if we allow ourselves to use it, right? That the dark side knew my potential future. They knew of a future that I didn't know could exist.
Mm-hmm.
And the light side used that to their advantage to train me to do what I do today.
I want to reiterate here for the listeners, you go through this whole story in the other episode, The Karmic Path, so they can catch up if they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, there's no accidents, but we got to be intentional at the same time. And I do want to leave with this thought, is that our intuition is our most profound psychic ability. We need to learn how to utilize, to lean into it and ask the question, why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so much to it that people don't get. And this psychedelics thing is, I would argue it is one of the most dangerous things that has come into public consciousness, because now they're trying to give you ketamine and they're trying to give you ayahuasca in all these different forms, different doses, these retreats. What is it? Bufo avadis or something like that. Frog,
right? Yeah.
Why would you want to lick a frog? Why would you want anything from a frog? I know that's not what they're doing.
princess stories about kissing frogs.
Yeah, exactly. But Tavistock, think tanks, things like that. People don't understand that there's been people for decades, even 2-3 centuries, that have been trying to control how we think and what we do and dictate our spiritual development. And they come up with these ideas. And so psychedelics is one of them. I know that friends are going to listen to this. I know that clients are going to listen to this. I know that new people are going to listen to this and they're going to disagree with it because they're so programmed and they're doing these psychedelics and they think that it's making a difference, but it is not. Because I can tell you what, all the people that I know who talk about psychedelics are extremely fucking immature. Straight up.
Honestly, I get a lot of clients who've had, I'm going to call them bad trips, and they've got all these things haunting them that they can't get released from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real problem.
I see it too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not going to bring you closer to your emotions. It's not going to help you heal your fears and your traumas. It's not. It's just going to show you a bunch of stuff that you think is healing to you somehow because you so-called confronted it, but it's not going to do anything for you. It's not. The people that have these stupid retreats anyway, they do not even provide you with tools for long-term self-reflection and self-regulation.
You leave the retreat, you're done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. What can you take home with you that you can apply and keep applying?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there that are convinced that this stuff works somehow, and they're just dumb. They just don't have any discernment, any spiritual discernment whatsoever to tell that they've been seconded, so to speak, by the powers that shouldn't be to do their dirty work for them.
Yeah, it's a form of spiritual bypassing in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I do see that a lot where people want to do the spiritual bypassing. They want to do the hard work. Doing the hard works, frankly, it's not fun, but when you get to the other side of it, it's like, wow, it's a huge relief. I did this. There's a sense of accomplishment. And you kind of get to go to the next level, so to speak. And I do see a lot of people utilizing the concept of spiritual bypassing when you're doing these, mind-altering drugs, or when you're running around saying, oh, I'm in the 5D all the time because I'm so elevated. Well, I'll tell you what, if I punch you in the face, I'm going to bring it down a notch, right?
Yeah, those people exist. Or don't worry, you can drink some alcohol and you can eat all the sugar you want because you're going to alchemize it. No, That's not how it works. Tell that to all the really sweet people I know with heart problems and stuff that they've been on the best vibrations since forever. Tell that to them, but their diet was garbage.
Yeah, and if we lived a part of our life where our diet was garbage, it doesn't mean it's the end all. We can make those changes now.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
it's never too late.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a million other questions I could ask you, but I've kept you entirely. I love
questions. We're going to have to do this again. I mean, I love this. I love these conversations that go deep and that have meaning. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. It helps that we are two people that have done a significant amount of work to the point where our intuition is really, really strong. And so, we both understand how unseen realms work. We both see the stuff. We work with it with our clients, and we're not full of hot air, because I have just found that there's 99% of the others out there they're all crazy people. Like you said, the ones that are like, they're in 5D and they're running around and they know everything. Their vibration's so high. Or even people who are not. Yeah. Or even people who are not on that side of things. They're psychologists or hypnotists and stuff. And, they refuse to acknowledge that MK Ultra exists. They refuse to acknowledge, the work of George Estabrooks or any of those others. It's the same, again, this dichotomy that occurs where there's people who know and there's people who don't want to know at all. And we're actually at that point now in humanity where the ones that don't know or they don't want to accept that something's going on, they're the problem.
Yeah. I go back to, we talk about our health all the time. We talk about our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, our financial health, but we really need to be focusing on our soul health.
Yeah, we really should. Laura, where can everybody find you?
We can go to thekarmicpath.com, and on the social media, it's the Karmic Path on, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm not on TikTok. I don't really know why, but whatever. But my website has a lot of free information. I've got a weekly blog that I produce on a variety of topics, and find out what rings true for you and why. If you're going through the blogs and you're reading through them, the spiritual war and how the unseen energetic world affects us is actually a year's worth of blogs that's been packaged up into segmented by different topics. So it makes it easier to kind of like pick that up and read that. And that's on Amazon. It'll be on Barnes and Nobles in a few days. It's only been out for, I think, less than a week, maybe at this point. But do what rings true for you. And if anybody needs a spiritual practitioner out there, yes, I do that, but ask your spiritual practitioner questions that are important to you. And if you're not happy with their answers or you don't feel good about them, you're not obligated to continue with them. You're better off not, frankly. And so again, thekarmicpath.com, that was my long-winded answer, sorry.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Thank you very much. This was fun.
I'm Jahan Sator, a CTAA accredited cognitive behavioral therapist, hypnotherapist, nutrition coach, mindfulness teacher, and specialist in the area of subconscious self-sabotage. You may also know me as the host of Boundless Authenticity. I assist by showing people of all walks of life how to be mindful and allow the negative automatic thoughts about the events of the external and the associated programs to reveal themselves fully so that they can learn to establish deep inner peace and operate from purpose and passion. Much of my work focuses on removing the disempowering thoughts and beliefs from the subconscious mind, which cause us to create less than favorable emotional consequences and circumstances. I teach you various ways to change internal dialogue, clear harsh memories and emotions, and delete useless information from the subconscious. I also teach when to meditate, how to meditate, and why you have certain thoughts and feelings during meditation, and how to handle them effectively. If you or someone you know are struggling with self-sabotaging behaviors and harsh emotional consequences, please do contact me at selfsabotageinfo@proton.me.